When the world sleeps and silence consumes the streets, there are moments when something else awakens. These are three true tales from those who face the unknown alone, in the dead of night. The darkness hides more than shadows, it listens, it watches, and sometimes, it moves. So, turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and prepare for 3 unsettling true dead of night horror stories. Story number 1, The Footsteps Behind the Door. Synopsis: a college student pulling an all-nighter in her dorm hears soft footsteps outside her door, slow, dragging, and stopping right at her room. She thinks it's a prank until the doorknob begins to turn, over and over again, in near silence. When she peers through the peephole, there's no one there. But a faint whisper comes through the gap beneath the door, "Are you awake?" The next morning, campus security finds muddy footprints leading only to her door and nowhere else. Story number 2, The Vanishing Car on Route 67. Synopsis: a night shift nurse drives home after a long shift on a foggy rural highway. She notices a pair of headlights following her closely, but every time she speeds up, they match her speed. Then, just as she turns down her exit, the lights suddenly vanish. Police later tell her that no cars were reported in that area, but an accident had occurred there 5 years ago to the day, involving a vehicle that caught fire, killing a nurse on her way home. Story number 3, The Visitor in the Window. Synopsis: a man wakes up at 3:17 a.m. to the sound of tapping at his bedroom window. Thinking it's a tree branch, he ignores it. But when the tapping turns into slow scratching, he glances toward the glass and sees the reflection of someone standing inside the room behind him. When he turns around, nothing's there. But on the window from the inside are handprints. There's something hauntingly sacred about the hours between midnight and dawn, that fragile stretch of time when the world falls silent and everything feels suspended. The street's empty, the lights flicker, and the ordinary hum of life fades into a deep, unsettling stillness. This is the dead of night, when the human mind becomes both the stage and the storyteller of its darkest fears. Our ancestors believed that when the world sleeps, the barrier between the living and the dead grows thin. And perhaps they weren't wrong. There's a strange stillness that fills the air, heavy and waiting, as if something unseen stirs within the shadows. Every faint sound, a creak of wood, a rustle of curtains, the wind pressing against a window, feels amplified 100-fold. What's rational by daylight becomes terrifying under the moonlight's cold gaze. At this hour, the mind begins to betray itself. Fatigue dulls logic, silence sharpens imagination. You start to wonder, was that just the house settling, or footsteps in the hallway? Is that the wind whispering, or someone breathing just behind your door? The quiet becomes unbearable, until you realize it's not truly quiet at all. It's the kind of silence that listens back. In the stories told here, from the slow footsteps outside a dorm door to the vanishing lights on an empty road, the night becomes more than a backdrop. It becomes a living thing, aware, patient, and predatory. It waits for that moment when the last light is off, when you're alone with your thoughts, and your heart begins to race for reasons you can't explain. The dead of night doesn't just reveal the darkness around us, it exposes the darkness within us. The fears we bury by day rise again when we are most vulnerable, whispering in the stillness. That's why the quietest hours often carry the loudest fears, because in that silence, you finally hear the truth: you were never really alone. The human mind is both our greatest protector and our deepest threat. It shields us from what we fear until darkness falls and silence removes the veil. When the lights go out, when the familiar fades, the mind begins to wander into places reason cannot follow. It starts to see what may not be there, to hear what might not exist, and to believe what it once dismissed. That's the power of the unknown. It bends the mind until fear becomes the only truth. In the footsteps behind the door, this idea takes form in the simplest, most primal way. A sound soft, slow, deliberate becomes a force of terror because it has no visible source. The student doesn't see anything, yet the sound grows louder, closer, purposeful. Her thoughts spiral. What if it's someone? What if it's something? The uncertainty itself becomes the horror. We fear not what we know, but what we can't explain. Psychologists say our brains are wired to create meaning out of chaos. When faced with incomplete information, a shadow without shape, a noise without cause, the mind fills in the blanks with imagination, often painting pictures far darker than reality itself. It's a survival instinct, a remnant from the time when danger truly did lurk in the dark. But in the modern world, that same instinct turns empty hallways and silent nights into haunted landscapes. The unknown has always fascinated and terrified us because it exists outside our control. We can't predict it, measure it, or reason with it. It's the feeling of standing at the edge of something vast and realizing it's staring back. When the student in the story hears the whisper beneath her door, her fear isn't just of a possible intruder, it's the terror of realizing she no longer understands the boundaries of her own reality. That's what makes night horror so deeply psychological. It's not just ghosts or shadows, it's the breakdown of logic itself. The moment when your own mind becomes the enemy whispering that maybe, you really did hear someone say, "Are you awake?" Time moves forward, but the past, it lingers. It hides in the corners of forgotten places, in the whispers of lonely roads, in the chill that creeps up your spine when you least expect it. We like to believe that once something ends, a moment, a life, a tragedy, it stays buried. But some events leave behind echoes that never fade. They replay, over and over, waiting for someone to notice. Waiting for someone to listen. In The Vanishing Car on Route 67, the idea of a lingering past becomes terrifyingly real. A nurse, exhausted and alone, drives through the fog of an early morning highway, a road haunted not by a person, but by a memory. The headlights behind her aren't just another vehicle, they're the reflection of something that once was. A moment of death, preserved in time, replaying itself every year like a broken record. It's said that some places remember. The walls of old hospitals, the forests where no birds sing, the empty roads stretching through the countryside, they absorb emotion like a sponge. Fear, pain, sorrow, they seep into the ground. And sometimes, when the night is quiet enough, those memories rise again, flickering through reality like faint signals from another world. But perhaps what's truly unsettling is not the ghost itself, it's the reason it stays. Maybe it's unfinished business, or unbearable guilt. Maybe it's simply that no one remembers. The nurse in the story drives that same road every night, unaware that she's retracing another woman's final moments. Two lives, separated by years, intersect in a single chilling instant when the headlights disappear, and the silence takes over. These hauntings remind us that death is not always the end. Some stories refuse to die. They remain tethered to the living world by emotion so powerful that it defies time itself. The past doesn't just haunt because it wants to, it haunts because it can't let go. And when the night is at its quietest, when you find yourself driving down a lonely road with no one else around, remember, some lights in your rearview mirror aren't meant to be followed. There's a certain terror that comes not from what we hear or feel, but from what we see, especially when what we see should not exist. Vision is supposed to be truth. Our eyes are the final judge of what's real. But what happens when they betray us? When you look into the darkness and something looks back, something that shouldn't be there, in the visitor in the window, that line between perception and reality shatters completely. A man wakes to tapping at his window, faint, rhythmic, almost polite. He assumes it's the wind, until the sound grows deliberate. He looks toward the glass, and what he sees makes his blood freeze, a reflection of a figure standing behind him. But when he turns around, there's nothing. Only silence. Only the faint fog on the window pane and the unmistakable imprint of hands pressed from the inside. This is the terror of the scene, the confrontation with the impossible. Our eyes, so reliant on logic, struggle to interpret something that defies explanation. And in that moment of disbelief, fear becomes absolute. It's not just that something unnatural is near, it's that your reality itself can no longer be trusted. You've glimpsed something that violates every rule of the world you thought you understood. Windows, mirrors, and reflections have always been symbols of thresholds, thin veils between the world we know and the one we fear. They invite us to look, to observe, to believe that what we see is safe and separate. But sometimes, they reflect what's really there, the hidden, the watching, the waiting. Perhaps that's why these moments feel so personal. To see something no one else can see is to question your sanity. Was it a trick of the light, or a message? Was the figure outside the window a stranger or something that's always been with you, waiting for the right night to reveal itself? The true horror lies not just in seeing the unknown but in realizing that the unknown sees you too. And once that connection is made, you can close your eyes, shut the blinds, and lock every door, but deep down, what did you hear tonight? Footsteps that stop just before your door, headlights that vanish into the mist, or a reflection that shouldn't have been there at all. Each of these stories reminds us of one simple, unsettling truth. The night is never truly empty. Even when the world sleeps, the dark stays awake, and it remembers every whisper, every shadow, every fear you try to bury. Maybe the things that haunt us aren't lost souls or restless spirits. Maybe they're pieces of our own memories, echoes of moments too heavy to fade. And maybe, just maybe, when you wake at 3 a.m. and feel that cold presence beside you, you're not imagining it. You're simply being remembered by the dark. So tonight, when you turn off the lights, don't listen too closely to the quiet. Because in the stillness of the dead of night, something might be listening back. Sleep well, if you can.